very much for allowing me to express my gratitude to Tom Miller to allow me to be here, and a very kind introduction by Eric Crystal. I would like to borrow a phrase from my previous presenter, the statutor, but I would like no way mentioning the statutor of the relationship between Vietnam and China. I'd like to welcome you to be back with the South China Sea, and my presentation will be focused on the South China Sea only. And the topic of my presentation today will be explain why it's very difficult for the literal state in the regions to maintain the status quo in the South China Sea. And at first, I'd like to explain why we need the status quo. Because we all hear about the complexity of the South China Sea dispute. And to begin with any dispute settlement, we need to maintain at least the status quo, not to escalate the dispute, not to escalate the tension. And then after that, we can settle the dispute. Just a brief information about the recent fact about the South China Sea issue, just in case any one of you here may not familiar with the situation of the regions. We have 2009 is the first wave again of the tension in the South China Sea after the 1974 and 1988. There are some incidents happen in the Paracel Islands, mainly between China and Vietnam about the arresting the fishermen. And then we have 2010, more and more incidents to come, same area. But then the peak area certainly come down in 2011. And from the map, you can see that the scope of the incident has been expanded from the north, from only between Vietnam and China, toward like the Philippines and China, and also to some certain extent, come down to the south with Malaysia as well. 2012, we see a very peak in tension in the South China Sea. We have two cutting cables between China and Vietnam in the EEZ of Vietnam. It was with the Binh Minh 02 and Viking 02 vessels. We also have the Scarborough tension with the Philippines, between China and the Philippines. 2013, a bit quiet for a while before a storm of this year. And this year we have the oil rig in May. We have the pictures quoted by my previous presenter minutes ago about the warship of the Philippines in the second Thomas shore. And then we also have the building construction by China in the Northern South Reef. So here's the situation. The whole thing happened, and the notice here is happened within the line. And what is the line? The U-shaped line. And especially this year, we see that China introduced a new map, which is called the horizontal. Before, the 9-dash line is a small quotation in the corner of the map of the mainland China. But now again, it becomes horizontal. And some people just make a joke that now the map of China looks exactly like the map of Southeast Asia, when you can see all the Southeast Asia, just because they would like to make the South China Sea, the 9-dash line, the South China Sea in the central positions. And more important, there's no 9-dash anymore, it's 10-dash. And now I'd like to bring you guys to a kind of new concept. We are quite familiar with the concept of U-shape. But now I think that it may be J-shape. Why I think that? Because if you look at the famous two island chain, the first island chain extends from East China Sea towards South China Sea, and the second island chain, so you can see that to a certain extent, the second island chain looks like the head of the J, and then all the first island chains look like the body of the J. So of course, resources in the South China is important, but the oil rig may not really about oil, and same to the construction. The construction is maybe related to island, and to some extent, I totally agree with your joke that international law is important, and China may would like to change the island to have more maritime zone, but here we have a more strategic calculation here. Because if you look at the model here, you can see a nodal function for a very tiny artificial island in the South China Sea. And we also see that, if you can look at this, 2010, China planned to break the first island chain. And then 2020 is will come to the maritime zone between the first and the two China chains. And 2050 is the aim for China to become great world water of the world. And it is the end, it is the war, and explain why we have all the situation happen here. One thing I would like to mention here that if you look at the map, we have the first island chain. Why it called island chains? Because to a certain extent, it constrained China to access to the ocean. In order to access to the big ocean, China need to either to access at first, the first star mentioned in the map, second star, third star, fourth one, fifth one, and the sixth one. All the six stars located in the East China Sea and well within Japan territory. And then we have three other, all within the South China Sea, and well fenced by the littoral state in the South China Sea. That's why we have the famous concept of ADA2. It's anti-deny, anti-access of China. China would like to monopolize their role in the South China Sea, so they would like to deny the access of the other country. They would like to deny to control the asset of the United States, because at the moment the United States, the blue water of the world, and they're present everywhere. But in order to use the South China Sea to serve for their interest, China would like to focus on AD. And here we have the U-shaped line. Before, the U-shaped line was explained by Taiwan. It's a kind of line to claim the territory, because the name of the line before it just were like island in the South China Sea only. So we can interpret that in 1947, Taiwan may think that they would like to claim all the island within the line, but then now with the resources, they think about historical right within the line, only based on historical rights, something that come from the sky, not from UNCLOS, I think so. So they can claim for oil, the oil line blocks that some previous presenters showed in their presentation before, and based on that, they can also claim for fishing. Now with J-shape, all the three priorities still maintains, but then we have another strategies. Security zone. We have all heard about the ADs that China have been declared in the East China Sea. I'm so sorry to disagree with Mark that maybe to some extent China does interfere with the freedom of navigation. And here not the navigation over the sea, but also the freedom of overflight. What is the difference? Because we all hear that, of course, not only China have ADs, US, Japan, South Korea all have ADs. But what are the difference? Why the other country deny or oppose to the ADs of China? Because the big differences of ADs of the US, Japan, and South Korea is that they're only preventive. Some aircraft, if they would like to have the intention to come into the mainland, they need to report. That's it. But what else in ADs of China? They would like every kind of aircraft cross the air zone that China already established under the ADs to report. If they fail to report, they may face with the intervention of Chinese effort. And what is the consequences? All the air commercial airlines need to report because they care about the safety of their passengers. They care about the business. So obviously, it's interfere with the freedom of a flight, let alone with freedom of navigation. Because I can see in the presentation of Bill before, Hainan province enact the new fishing regulation. And in that bill, we can see that a certain right of fishing vessels from the foreign countries may be limited. It's a kind of limit the freedom of navigation right. And also, from security zone, we come to dominance. Of course, I hear from the presentation of Mark that China always blamed that it was the evil littoral state in the Southeast Asia just followed their former colonial to abuse China's right again, to interfere with China domain. But I'm not sure what is the China domain, because all the other sea power already present in the South China Sea for long. We also know the famous concept of Chinese Silk Road. Why we have the Silk Road? because the commercial relationship has been established between China and some other external countries. China cannot do business alone. We have the presence of the other commercial country in the world and the region long before. And if we talk about dominance, I don't think that the South China Sea has been the domain of China that long. And finally, and also the big goal, since Xi Jinping came to power, he introduced a new concept, China dreamed. What is China dreamed? I don't know. I may seek the advice from some other, but the China dreamed caused a lot of attention of the world and catch attention of China nationalisms because it's the revisit of China nationalisms. It brings the proud of the Chinese in of the world back to the top that China at the top of the world. China is very famous in speak beautiful word without giving the concept. With China dream, we know that China would like to be back, but more than be back, because China before never be a blue water, but now they would like to compete with the US to become the blue water. Another thing, something that I may sympathy with Professor Tung Wu, that any country have domestic problems, and to some extent, the domestic problem in China is also make a contribution in the South China Sea. Xi Jinping is the third generation of leader that not handpicked by Deng Xiaoping. And he has already opened a lot of front in China. In order to avoid all the opposition, he need to gather the power from the PLA. That's why the PLA now have the great voice in Chinese foreign policy. And it is dangerous because it's where the hawk come over in the theater. Lastly, it's my last slide, don't worry. How we can solve the South China Sea? Where it can start? And here I find really the dilemma. Where we can have the vicious circle. First, we have everything start with territory. Because territory is the thing that starts the dispute. And we also support for the land dominancy from the land territory because it's in dispute. We have this maritime dispute. So we have territory come over to sovereign rights, and of course, all about the sovereign right is about the resources of the South China Sea. Everyone talk about strategic location of the South China Sea, where we have the great potential of oil and gas, where you have a big fishing ground in over the world, where we have a very popular navigation route in the South China Sea. All to all is the resources. But with China, it's not only the resources, because blue power, they want to become a marine powers. And then, of course, supremacy and dominance in the South China Sea. And at the end, we have domestic problem, nationalism coming in. How to solve it? For territories, we need self-restriction, statical. I agree with Mark that DOC is the very important document up to now, but I would like you to quote the full quotation, because at the end of settle the dispute by direct party concern, we have the end that according to international law, especially UNCLOS. Then we have UNCLOS, of course, I agree with joke that we need the rule of the law. Only based on law, something very natural, something is partial, we need to draw the line properly and you can settle the dispute. Joint development, possible, because at the moment Vietnam is the most countries have many joint development model with other countries, Malaysia, even with China. Incident management, no more P3, no more impeccable. We need certain kind of mechanism to manage. Transparency, monitoring, trust building. Each year, we have different white paper. Maybe one come from China, one from the state, with different number on military expenditure of China. Here's come the room for transparency. And also, please manage the domestic. I don't think that it's useful now today to talk too much about nationalisms, because everyone has the proud to become a national of the countries. But for the kind of dispute, we need to lower it down for the benefit of the whole regions. And at the end, last word please. It's the role of public opinions. Only the public opinion in supporting the rule of law in building the rule of the roads here in the broad meaning, international law and the rule to many incident, it is a way to reduce the tension and to settle the dispute in the future. My time is up, I know, so welcome all the questions in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thanks to all our panelists. I think what we're going to do now is have